Hello there, folks. It's Sandy from English Speaking again. Today's video is about IELTS Speaking Part 1. You know, I've been teaching students for several years now on how to approach IELTS and how to get the bands that they desire. And there's several things I'd like to say about it. Firstly, and I'm not going to go into this in depth right now, but be realistic about what you're trying to achieve. If you are on YouTube and other areas like that, looking and watching the people that say you should be aiming for band 8 and band 9, and they're showing you people answering questions, etc., perfectly. Please, please, please don't watch them. You're totally wasting your time. These are fabricated and they bear no relevance to what's going on in the examination. But let me tell you a story here. The main purpose of this video. Several years ago, a student took a trial lesson with me, which is only half an hour. And we're talking about, their intention was to take IELTS. And they were aiming for a band 7 or a band 7.5, which I would recommend at least a band 7 being the target for most students. Universities across the world look for between 6.5 or 7 in IELTS to accept students into the organization. But this particular student, he was a guy actually, and he said to me, he said, during this trial lesson, he said, we got around to talking about the speaking. He said, well, the speaking was the part he really wanted to concentrate on, and maybe a bit of the writing as well to get feedback, which is absolutely superb. That's what we should be doing. So when we started talking about the speaking, he said he wasn't worried about the first part, as that really didn't come into his consideration. As you had heard, it was just a warm-up and it wasn't anything serious, and he didn't think he had to worry about that. He thought his English was fluent enough or good enough to get him through the first part of the speaking test. So that intrigued me, you know, because already I had detected that I'm not so sure that he's correct. So I discussed it further with him, and then I realized he was under a complete misconception on part 1 of the speaking test and had no idea of how important this part of the test is. So this video today I'm going to highlight this because part 1 is very important. Remember that first impressions count. This guy, he quickly realized that he needed to do a lot of work on part 1 as well as part 2 and part 3. But we'll go over that in the coming videos. And let's get started on this one. I want to take you through speaking part 1. Thank you for joining me. So let's go. Okay, let's talk about the speaking test, and particularly part 1 of that speaking test. The speaking test is the last aspect of the IELTS test overall. Normally, it might not even happen on the same day as you took the other parts of the test, but it is an important part. It's equally important as the other parts, and this is a day that's a little bit special, or this particular part of the test is a little bit special in that you are going to be in front of your examiner, communicating face-to-face, and hopefully making good impressions with your fluency. Some people find it pretty daunting, actually, and I can understand why. Some people don't really like being in front of another person and speaking, but it's got to be done. And well, other people think, wonderful, it's better than speaking into a computer. I'm looking forward to it. And that's hopefully the way you're going to be approaching it. You're looking forward to it and you're ready for it. As I said earlier, first impressions count. Make sure your appearance is right. Make sure you're reasonably smartly dressed. Smart casual is perfect for the test, but it gives a good first impression. Make sure your bearing's right. And when I say bearing, what do I mean by bearing? I mean that you walk in, you're standing straight, you've got a smile on your face, you look confident, and everybody gets an impression, hey, this is somebody that's going somewhere, that's just come into the test center. Your attitude's got to be right, which goes with your confidence. You've got to be absolutely confident and have the right attitude. I'm going to pass this. I've already done my listening. I've already done my reading. I've already done my writing, and I feel I've done well in those. So only this part, and it's all over. That's the sort of impression you want to be giving and feeling as you arrive at the test center. They are going to get you to go with the examiner into the room where you're going to be tested. When you get in there, they will check you. They will do the introductions. They will check your ID or passport, whatever you have with you, to confirm your identity. And then the test is going to start. And that's where we're going now. We're going to talk about the start of the test and what's ahead. Stay with us. So, folks, let's get into how we start answering the questions. We're just starting part one. How do we go about answering these questions? Now then, let me tell you that from my experience, many students have come to me where they have been practicing themselves and have listened to various things, and they've refined starting their answers down to statements like, I think, it's okay. In my opinion, yeah, that's okay, that's good. And from my perspective, another advancement, very good. But, you know, the trouble is that they seem to keep answering the questions with the same statements. Many students have listened to every question answer, in my opinion, or I think. You know, one of the things the examiner is looking for is the breadth of lexicon, actually your vocabulary, and how you can use various forms. So it's important to have various ways of starting your answer, depending on the feeling you have and whatever question it is. So I'm going to run through a few alternative ways of starting your answers. Now, this is not only very useful for here in part one, but it's very useful actually for parts 2 and 3 also. So it's worth taking note of this, and it should prove very valuable to you. Just before we move on, though, the expressions I talked about, I think, in my opinion and from my perspective, you know, another one, in my opinion, if particularly for the second part, the part 2 of the speaking test, where you're given a minute to prepare, because you're actually thinking about your answer, you can actually start that with, in my considered opinion, because you've actually thought about what you're going to say. So it is a considered opinion. But you cannot use that in the third part, obviously, because you don't have time to fully consider the question. So if you're going to use in my opinion, it's just in my opinion. Anyway, let's move on, and I'll go through some various other ways that you can start, and we'll talk about that further. So let us begin by talking about the type of questions you're going to be facing in part 1 of the IELTS speaking section. These questions are all about you, and you will know the answers because they're about you and your life and what you're thinking and what you prefer, etc. They're the type of questions who, what, where, when, why, and how. Very easily answered. So the trick here really is to answer the questions as easily as possible. Speak for three or four sentences, around 20 seconds, slightly plus, and answer them, trying to interject with some good vocabulary and using your grammar properly. That's the key. Now, let me tell you something else. Why this part of the test is so important. This is where the examiner will get his first inclination means his first idea of what level you are currently speaking at. So he might think, now this sounds like a 6.5 or a 7. It's quite possible. And then he will spend the rest of the test constantly looking at, is this the right level or not? Should I be a bit higher? Should I be a 7, 7.5? Should I be an 8? That's the way he'll be looking at it. Will he be saying, 7, no, not a 7, 6.5, no, not a 6. And this is it as the test progresses, of course. So this is why part 1 is particularly important. Yes, it should be the simplest part of the speaking test, but it's also probably one of the most important parts, because this is where they're getting the very first inclination of how good you are. So you have to be good. You have to work on this bit. It's not difficult, but you have to get the right vocabulary, etc. And that's what we're going to cover now. Let's look at that a bit more closely. So here I list 15 options for starting your answers to the various questions you might get in IELTS. Some of them are not so common, but the majority of them are very easy to use, they're easy to learn, and they're easy to adapt to a lot of questions. So let's briefly run through them. Number 1, to begin with, a good start to an answer. 2, initially. 3, firstly. Listen to my intonation as well as we're going through these. Number 4, to start off. 5, to start with. 6, in the beginning. 7, at the outset. 8, to set the stage. 9, to kick things off. 10, to launch into the answer. 11, in essence. 12, essentially. 13, to put it simply. 14, basically. 15, at its core. Now there's a couple in there that I would say are quite difficult to adapt, but the majority of them, as I say, are very, very good, and you should be trying to learn some of these and get comfortable with practicing them and using them, and you will soon be able to adapt them to many, many questions, which we're going to have a go at in a moment. Okay, folks, this is us. We're moving on. We're not far to go now, but this is a very important aspect as well. What we're going to do is I'm going to go through several typical IELTS Part 1 questions, and I'm going to be using the key phrases that I've already went through with you to start the answers to the questions. And I've also tried to add in some slightly more complex vocabulary and maybe a different way in answering the questions to what you may have already considered. So take a look. It's worth remembering that the more individual and the more proficient and fluent that you can become at speaking conversationally and being in a normal conversation, asking and answering questions, the more impressive your whole fluency performance is. So, thinking of that, let's get in and try some of these questions. Question: do you live in a house or an apartment? Answer: basically, I live in an apartment. To live in a house would be nice for many reasons, but would require moving to a rural location away from the city. An apartment gives the convenience of being close to my college and also the many facilities that surround it. So, there we go. A full answer, not too short, not too long, and it explains exactly why the apartment's convenient, etc. And there is a few bit more extended vocabulary in there. So good, number one gone. Question, do you enjoy reading? Answer, to put it simply, I rarely have time to do any fictional reading, although I did enjoy it some years ago. Thinking back, I remember how much I enjoyed reading the Harry Potter series. It was very popular with many of my friends also, and together we would discuss the books at length. Question, do you like computer games? In the beginning, when I started to be able to access computer games, I enjoyed them so much that they almost became an addiction. I dread to think how many hours I have wasted in front of a computer playing games. I believe this is probably a common problem for many children or adolescents, even now at this moment of time. Question, do you think English will be important for you in the future? Answer, essentially, English is the universal business language. Getting proficient in the language is essential if I want to follow the career path I am hoping for. Additionally, being able to converse at all levels socially would also be beneficial. So yes, English is already important to me. Note the ending here. I didn't say, yes, it will be important to me. I said it's already important to me. So this is a sort of quirk in answering the question that just makes that sort of difference sometimes. Question, do you use a mobile phone a lot? Answer, to begin with, I consider the term mobile phone to be extremely outdated. The majority of the devices that we carry everywhere are high-tech communication devices. Now we rely on these items for many things: accessing files, searching for information, entertainment, and various forms of communication which happen to include telephone calls. I do use my mobile phone extensively. There is an answer that is relatively complex, and if you can think of answers like this, then I am sure they would be well accepted. Question, do you prefer playing sports or watching them? Answer, to start with, I would say I have little interest in either watching or playing sports. However, I do consider myself an active person. I go swimming at least once a week and also work out regularly at a fitness centre close to where I stay. Finally, for this video, question, what is your favourite food? Answer, essentially, I enjoy eating, and to identify a favourite food is difficult. I'm not a vegetarian, and I do enjoy eating meat, fish, and seafood. When eating out, I like to eat Chinese food, particularly the hot pot. So maybe the answer lays there. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's going to prove helpful for you in your efforts in IELTS. I know it's a difficult time for a lot of people. I have, as I've said before, I've helped many students go through the IELTS and get the band they require. Short tips, as I've said before, don't aim for the sky. Aim for the moon, and if you hit the sky, then yeah, you're doing okay. Don't over commit yourself. As I've said before, a good target for anybody aiming for university is minimum 6.5, but 7 is normally ideal. And if you work towards that, then you will feel that you're progressing well towards it, and you will know that you can achieve. If you're aiming to get an 8, 8.5, or a 9, unless you're absolutely proficient and fluent now, it's a very tall order. There's a majority of English speakers. When you go into, you know what it's like yourself. When you go into a test, an exam, etc., you are feeling apprehensive and you're not 100% sure. This is the same for everybody. And to go in there into a test like IELTS and to perform 100% perfectly, it doesn't happen to many people, I can assure you. And that's why a lot of these things that you see on YouTube, get an 8 or get a 9. I treat with a pinch of salt. I don't believe it. So if you think you're struggling and you want assistance, I would be very, very happy to help you. I currently teach on the platform iTalki, ITALKI, as you see on my shirt, and you can have a trial lesson, which is 30 minutes for only $10. $10 for 30 minutes, you know? That might be the best $10 you've ever spent. So if you're worried and you think you need a bit of assistance, come to iTalki. The link will be below the video, and book a trial lesson. Let's have a chat, and I'll see what we can do and what your objectives are, and I will discuss how we can work towards that if you want me to help you. So thank you for watching. Take care, and whatever you do, best of luck with IELTS.